Okay, hello everyone. Today we'll go through the bubble sort algorithm and how we can implement it in Python and in pseudocode. First we'll go through the pseudocode and I'll explain exactly how it works. So we have firstly a for loop and a repeat loop, which will also be another for loop within Python. Within pseudocode we'll have our array and we'll set our max index to, in this case, 5, or 4, sorry, 4. Since we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, our max index will be 4, and n will be equal to that max index minus 1, because that's how many times we need to go through our for loop. N minus 1 times, or max index minus 1 times, essentially. We'll just make that equal to n. That makes it easier for us, so we don't have to write n minus 1 here. Okay, so we have our for loop. J is equal to 0, and it'll go from j will go from 0 to the max index minus 1, so 0 to 3, and that's how many times it'll iterate through the for loop, and where j is our index and minus is our array here. Okay, we'll have a no more swaps variable, which will take in a true statement, which is used to check if we need to continue swapping values or we can end our loop. Okay, this is a more efficient way of doing it. So we have our for loop essentially here and another for loop here. If we had to do it in code, we have two for loops. First for loop just instantiates the no more swaps variable. Then we go to our second for loop, which will actually iterate through the array. So we have if the value in the array at j, which can be at this point 0, so we're starting at 0, is greater than the next value, or j plus 1, which is here. Essentially, if this value is greater than the value to the right in the array, then swap them. This is a swapping. This is what we do for swapping. So we have a temp value that we're taking in 7. So this temp value will now equal 7. Okay. This temp value will now equal 7. And then we'll take in the next value into my list. This was originally 7, but now we're taking in the right value, which is 1. Yeah. Then the next value will now take in the temp value, which is 7. So now what that means is that this index here in the array will now hold 7, and this index in the array will now hold 1. So we've essentially just swapped them. We swapped them around. Okay. All you need to know is this piece of code here. To swap, we use this in C. In Python, there's an easier way to do it, which I'll show you later. Then having 3 lines of code, you only need 1 line. You don't have to instantiate a temp variable. But in C or C++, you would usually have to instantiate a temp variable. Okay. So now we have our if statement that swaps, and at the end of the if statement, we say no more swaps is false. This is so that we continue swapping until our no more swaps is true. Okay. So it'll continue swapping. These two will be swapped. Then it'll check these two. Is 7 greater? Yes. They get swapped. Is 7 greater than 3? Yes. They get swapped. 7 greater than 4? Yes. They get swapped. Okay. And now when they've gotten swapped, now it's come to the end of the array. This for loop is ended. Now no more swaps is equal to true. This repeat loop can end, and we can go to until no more swaps is true. So we can go out of this entire loop and go to no more swaps equals true. So next j is just saying that after each for loop, in pseudocode, after each for loop, it'll go to the next j. And if our n is now equal to n minus 1, so it'll keep making n smaller and smaller after the for loop, this for loop here. Okay, so after we continue repeating this loop, we'll have no more swaps equals true. This array is now sorted. Okay, Now we'll go to our next statement where we have 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 4, 5, and 6, our array. So this is a new list. So at j equals to 0, this will be what happens. We'll have 7 swap with 1 because 7 is greater than 1, and 7 swap with 2, then 7 swap with 3. But now what happens if we get a number that is greater than 7? Once a number is greater than 7, it'll leave the if statement, go back to the for loop, and say, okay, we've iterated once, now j is going to equal to the next j. So j is going to go from 0 to 1, okay? And then it'll go through the loop and see, oh, these values are all correct until this point. 8 is greater than 4. So it'll go j equals 1, swap 4 and 8. Once I swap 4 and 8, we'll have it go through the entire loop, swap 8 and 5, swap 8 and 6, and then finally 8 will get to the end of the array, can't move any longer. Now 8 is where it's supposed to be. It'll go to the next j, so the third iteration. Go through our third iteration, j equals 2, and we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But at this point here, 7 is greater than 4. So 7 will swap with 4, 7 will swap with 5. Let me do it here. 7 will swap with 4, 7 will swap with 5, 7 will swap with 6. And then I'll check, oh, 7 is less than 8, not greater than, so the if statement will stop. It'll stop at 7, stop at j equals 2, and then it's going to have j equals 3, but j equals 3 doesn't matter because this statement is already false for everything in the array, and so no more swaps. It'll leave this for loop and go to no more swaps equals true. No more swaps equals true, so our array is sorted. Okay, and I'll end our loop. So that's for our pseudocode. Now in Python, how we'd write this is we define a function. Okay, we'll call it bubble sort array. I'll just call it ARR, it's easier for me. Then we'll have n equals the length of the array minus 1, because as we saw here, we need our, sorry about that, we need our max index minus 1, that's our n. So if the length of the array is the max index, then length of the array minus 1 is equal to n. Then we'll have a for loop, our first for loop, with I in range of n. So we'll go from 0 to n, essentially, for our first for loop. That's the repeat section here. Okay. Then we'll have the repeat section here. Then we'll have another for loop. Well, first we'll have not swapped equals to true. This is so we can check if we need to continue swapping. Then we'll have another for loop for j that's in range of n minus 1. So iterate through j n minus not n minus 1, sorry, n minus I times. So we have a for loop where whatever length we have, let's say the max index was 5, then n would be 4. The first for loop will go from 0 to 4. The second for loop will go from 0 to n minus the current index. So the current index is 0. Then it'll go through to 4. If the current index is 1, it'll go through to 3. If the current index is 2, it'll go through to 2. If the current index is 3, it'll go through to 1. Current index is 4, and it'll go through to 0. Okay, for j. Then we'll have an if statement where if the array, like we said before, if the array, the left value is greater than the right value in the array, then we can swap the two arrays, where in Python we don't need a temp variable. We can just straight say the array on the left and the array on the right are swapped. So we'll say the array on the left is equal to the array on the right, and the array on the right, the array variable on the right is equal to the array variable on the left. Okay. This will just swap them straight. So it's the same as saying if we wanted to swap x and y values, we could say x and y is now equal to y and x. We can do this in Python. You don't need any temp variable. If this is the case after we've swapped, we can say not swapped is false, meaning that we have swapped, and it'll continue running until not swapped is set back to true. So it has to leave this second for loop. The second for loop will only stop running after it's run the specific amount of times until the index is equal to the length of the array minus 1. Okay, this is how you do it for bubble sort. So now if bool, we could just say actually if not swapped is equal to true, then we should be able to say, we'll actually run a bool, if not swapped is true, then you'll be able to run return, and it'll return to wherever the bubble sort was called from. So now we can run a test program for our code. Let's write an array. Okay, we'll just put whatever numbers we want here. This already gave us some numbers. Let's do some more. And 5. I think that's all the numbers that we'd want. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have 10 indexes here, meaning that the length of our array is going to be 9, because 0 to 9. Then we can bubble sort our array. So we call bubble sort function. Then we can print our array, but then that's only going to print the first value in our array. So what we'll do, first we'll print out the sorted array is, you can say the sorted array in ascending order. Ascending order is, and then instead of writing going to our array, we have to say for I in the range of the length of our array. This is going from 0 to the length of our array. It doesn't matter if you put 0 there, I'm just writing it there so you can understand that we're going from 0 to the length of our array. So it's going to run through the entire length of our array, through all of the indexes, and then we can just print our array straight. So now let's test our program. We run it, and here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's sorted. So this unsorted array is now sorted, and that is bubble sort. Now if we want to make it look a bit nicer, and we want it, let's say we want this on a new line, we can then write, this will make this separated on a new line. Then we can say end of our line, instead of putting a new line every single time, okay, instead of putting a new line and typing this out afterwards, we can just say end of our statement here can be a space. Okay, so we run it. You see how now we have it as a space, so it's next to our printed text. Now we want it to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over here, this section here. So we can make the length of our array, instead of having a new line after every print, we can do the same and say end and put a space. So instead of having a new line, it'll just print it out straight. Okay. And we can even print another new line here. Want to make it look even better. Just another new line. There you go. Now we run. And here's our sorted array. Array is sorted. You can change your array to whatever you want. It will always be sorted. Okay, so that's bubble sort. I hope you understood. And I hope you understood the pseudocode as well. And yeah, that's the end of the lesson.